Well, hello, everybody. How you all doing tonight? I'm double checking and making sure the camera in the back of the room turns towards me, which it should in a minute, to make sure that we've got the live stream going properly. Thank you to everybody who's here. Thank you to everybody who's live streaming on our YouTube. If you didn't know, we've started doing that since we moved over here to Hopkins. We're live streaming all the presentations on our YouTube, and then they immediately get posted onto our YouTube so you can rewatch it later or revisit the slides that you didn't remember. Or any of those things. For those of you that I have not met yet, my name is Shannon Simpson. I'm the executive director here for Monterey Audubon Society. And again, thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you. And I apologize in advance if anybody is here to hear about the Los Angeles parrots. Our speaker had something come up and we had to pivot, and we figured what a great way to pivot to talk about Heermann's gulls after we just wrapped up an amazing season of monitoring, which all of us are going to be talking about. Can you have Chris check the camera? So thank you again for all of you being here tonight, and I'm super excited to talk to you all about our project. We have been doing a lot of work and putting a lot of effort into this, and I'm sure you guys are all excited to learn more about it. Can I see I'm just going to do a quick data poll real quick if you want to help me out. Can I see a raise of hands if you found out about this just because of the Facebook event that was posted? Okay, a couple. Okay. And then did the rest of you mostly hear about it because you already know that we have a monthly lecture and you just wanted to see the topic? Okay. Instagram, other social media, other email blasts, other people telling you, those kinds of things. Monterey Weekly. Okay, awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you. It's really great for us to know what marketing attempts work. So thank you for bearing with me for a sec. On that note, I wanted to share with you all, I think I shared last month that we have a new club called the Monterey Jaywalkers Club. And it is for people in their 20s or 30s or somewhere in that range-ish. We don't check IDs, but we're trying to get younger folks together and get them out birding. And Lulu, right over here, is one of the ones that has helped start that club. So I want to turn the mic over to her for just a moment to talk about what's going on with the Jaywalkers Club.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. My name is Lulu, and I am actually new to the area and wanted to find a way to connect with nature and get other people my age out there. And so I started Jaywalkers with Monterey Audubon Society help. And so we have a lot of exciting events coming up. You can check our Instagram at Monterey Jaywalkers. The name is very catchy, so we're easily to find. So we're going to go do cleanups, go on bird walks. We just went on a bird walk to Asilomar, and it was kind of a walk. We walked like 5 minutes to the beach and all the wildlife came towards us. So we didn't really go that far. My all trails probably said like I walked like less than 0.2 miles. So we're going to strive for more next time. But if you're interested, please follow us at Monterey Jaywalkers on Instagram. And we're excited to get more people. We're at 200 followers, but we want to keep going up. So thank you, guys.
And I'm going to remind you all again at the end of the night, but I wanted to put this in your brains multiple times. We have Morgan Lewis is a local artist who is hosting an art show up at the Ship Store starting on August 29th through October 11th. So that's the Festival of Birds weekend. And 40% of the proceeds from Morgan's artwork will be going back to us here at Monterey Audubon Society. And we are hosting a opening on the 29th that you all are all cordially invited to. It's a free event. We're going to have wine from Morgan Winery. We'll have beer from Alvarado Street Brewery. Both of those have been donated. So it's free to you all. And then we're also going to have a silent auction that I'll be getting posted information on that in the next week or so for you all to help us raise a little bit of money. So without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to the first of our presenters tonight. me and Amanda and Deb Kramer, Amanda Priest, one of our board members, and Deb Kramer, our other staff member. We're going to tag team this presentation tonight. And we've got Kai Russell, our board vice president, newly elected board vice president, here in the front. That has been the head of our Heermann's Gull monitoring project and will be jumping in as needed as well. So you'll be hearing from the 3 to 4 of us tonight. Without further ado, here's Amanda.
Thank you, Shannon. Thanks so much. And thanks everyone for coming tonight. This is so exciting. I feel like there's been this really amazing support around the Heermann's Gull. I'm going to talk a little bit about their natural history first thing, just to get everybody like, okay, Heermann's Gull, big picture, and then we'll kind of just start narrowing focus into our project that we're doing locally. Most of you have probably heard this, I was going to say spiel. It's not really a spiel, it's our mission. It's our mission, and I'm proud to say it every time that the Monterey Audubon Society is devoted to celebrating and conserving the birds and wildlife of California's Central Coast. So that's what we do. If you're into birds, we're into birds. We should hang out. That's all we do. We're really into birds. We do bird conservation projects, field trips, bird walks, public events like this. So, come hang out with us. And so, yeah, we'll go ahead and talk a little bit about the Heermann's gull. Larus heermanni is the scientific name. Lucky us birders, we don't have to worry about Latin. We have standardized common names. But as someone asked, they said, well, who's Heermann? I did read that, and then I thought it wasn't as helpful for natural history, and I kind of forgot, but it was like Dr. Adolf or Alexander is a German Heermann, and it was named after him, naturalist back in the 1800s maybe. Anyway, so that's where that comes from, but that's not the point. Look at this bird. This bird is super beautiful. Whether it's the Heermann's gull or the Baja gull or the white-headed gull or the white-headed red-beaked gray gull, I think it's an awesome bird, and they don't know one way or the other what we're calling them. They're really special. They're one of the few gulls that you start to feel like, I'm kind of confident about my gull ID all of a sudden. Like, this is that sheet that makes me pull my hair out. It's texture ability. I mean, there's dozens of species here in the wintertime, and they go from this splotchy juvenile plumage over to this beautiful breeding plumage, but a lot of the standard Larus, that genus name, a lot of those large white-headed gulls can really throw you for a loop if you're starting out birding. So don't feel bad if you're intimidated. This guy's going to help you out because unmistakable, even from its juvenile plumage all the way through. Global population, pretty big, seemingly 350,000 in the global population. This is a goofy word, reverse migrant. It's definitely a Northern Hemisphere biased kind of vocabulary term, because to us, most birds, you fly north for summer, south for winter. These guys do the opposite. They fly south for summer, and then they come north. They disperse northward across up the Pacific coast in the winter. So that's typically when we see them around here, at least the bigger numbers of them. This is a fun little trivia word, maybe, if you go to a trivia night or something. Kleptoparasite or kleptoparasitism. That's where something, if you're a kleptomaniac, you want to steal all the things and pocket them. If you're a parasite, you live off of another creature. So they steal stuff. They're not obligate to do that. They don't have to always do it, but it's how they make a living, stealing stuff from other animals. And the pelicans are their mark. That's who they know to find. Those guys dive and do all the work, and they're trying to get the water out of the pouch. And they're I'll just dip in there and grab that anchovy real quick. This being shrewd, smart, shrewd birds. That's all these gulls. They're amazing. So yeah, they primarily eat smaller bait fish, anchovies, mackerel, herring, and sardines. Really beautiful birds. Here's some nice options, right, for the plumage. The sexes are similar. That's for most of our gulls. The males and females are identical looking, at least by plumage. There's obviously other things that are different, but and then this is one of those larger bodied gulls. That's a 4-cycle molt strategy. So it takes about 4 years, or not 4 years, 4 molts, we'll say, to go from your juvenile plumage. This is one of our local kids. He's got the band on his leg. Talk more about that. Up to this breeding plumage right here. So in the summertime, you'll see them looking like this. In the wintertime, they'll start getting their gray head that's all splotchy, unless they're kind of those subadults, and they're in this kind of a template here. What's interesting is that the light gray tips on these juvenile feathers, that actually wears off. They don't molt in different feathers. The tips just wear off, and then they start to look like this. That's cool. Save some energy there. And so this is, oh, dang it, the arrow is not in the right place. Well, it's in the right place, but it just got into the word California. So this is the range map, 350,000 in their global population. This is the space on the planet we're talking about, you know, down here in Mexico and then up into Vancouver in British Columbia. This is the crazy thing though, 90% of the global population nest on one island in Baja, down here, Isla Raza. And then they have this arrow too, that's us. But so you can maybe already see what the problem could be with this situation. If you 90% of your population nests in one place, you know, all your eggs in one basket, so to speak. So yeah, the definitely vulnerable, going on and off. Okay, thank you. Vulnerable to climate change as ocean temperatures increase, that whole food web, all those bait fish they need to catch to feed their chicks or to feed themselves, that whole marine food web kind of drops out in big heating ocean and El Nino events, which we're going into a pretty intense El Nino here soon. Isla Raza does have black rats on the island, so rodents, other invasive species like cats or goats are a classic problem for seabirds and on their nesting islands. And then competition with fisheries, the whole sea of Gulf of California, I guess is what we call it. That's got a lot of fisheries in there, and they're trying to capture and collect the same fish that these birds want to eat, so that's a challenge. So let's focus in on our seaside birds. These guys are really special. These are really unique birds. This is just a little screenshot from an article that Don Roberson, who's in the room, and Rita, I think you're a co-author on that, put in North American birds as like, you know, first example of a successful Heermann's gull nest in North America, or in the United States. So in 1994, there were 4 pairs that were just, you know, trying something out. Trying something new, and they started nesting on these artificial islands in Roberts Lake, that little lake in front of the embassy suites in Seaside. And they were successful that year. The next year they had a couple chicks, and then the next year they were failing. But the islands themselves were kind of eroding away. Those weren't built for seabirds to nest on. They were supposed to be vegetated. Seabird poop often kills all the vegetation. It kind of washed away and dissipated into the lake there. So then they started going up onto the rooftops. Again, these birds are pretty flexible and they're doing their best to survive. So they've started utilizing, this is actually the foundation of the old islands they used to nest on in Roberts Lake. So the foundation's there. It's like knee deep if you go out there. You can still stand on it. But they moved up onto the rooftops. So they're trying to make it work. And they were kind of booted around different places in Seaside. So yeah, you know, and you can see it's kind of like an island, right? It's a tar and gravel roof, looks like a rocky beach. It's a sea of cars around it. Like, it really does make sense in my mind why they would choose that. You know, not, you know, that's, the business owners don't like that idea at all, but that's just what you get. Tar and gravel roof equals rocky beach. So that's what the gulls have been picking out. This is an example of a shot from a drone. We're going to talk more about how we monitor these birds this year. But you can see these little specks on the rooftop. So this is Broadway Avenue going that direction, and Calaveras Avenue is going perpendicular up there. So we've got some Heermann's gulls up here, these little dots. Actually, these are California gulls, Heermann's gulls over here as well. So you can just see it's an island, and that's where they have been successful since, you know, 1999, 2000, they were on those islands in Roberts Lakes, but subsequently they've been up on rooftops. They've been really kind of guerrilla nesting, you know, urban strategists all around Seaside, just trying to make a living up there. So this is generally what we see as their breeding cycle in Seaside. It kind of matches up with what goes on down in Isla Raza based on the literature. So they're, you know, back up on the roofs and, you know, fighting and figuring out their little mini territories in April. Eggs are typically laid the last week of April. We started seeing chicks on May 25th. They have a 28-day incubation period, so that egg would have been laid like April 27th. First fledge, so the first time a chick was seen like flying, was June 29th. And then, you know, by the end of July, going into the first week of August, all the fledglings had vacated the roof. So really short time period that all this stuff happens. Nesting's a really short, energy intensive, you know, stressful time of year for birds, but it's quite short, quite truncated. This is just a nice comparison to the 3 gulls that nest around here. So we're always talking about beautiful Heermann's gulls, gray body, white head, red bill. They also are joined on the rooftops in Seaside by California gulls. So if you see a white-bodied gull with a gray back and yellow legs with a red and black dot on the yellow bill, that's going to be a California gull, which is different from our Western gull. These are the 2 I think people are like, oh, darn it, birds, why are you so similar? Western gulls have the pink legs and then just the red dot on the beak and a darker gray back. So, but a nice helpful way to remember where they are in the summer months is that if they're in a really big group and they're on a roof and you're in Seaside, it's probably one of these 2. If you're anywhere else, it's going to be Western gulls. These guys can nest in colonies, but it's often just like, we have to because it's the only island. Like the majority of their population nest on the Farallones. And that's just like an amazing island with a bunch of food around it. So that's where we all nest. But mostly in our urban area here, there's just one on your roof or one on the apartment complex or one on the Safeway. So they can spread out a lot more. These 2 up top, the Heermanns and the California, they feel best in huge groups. They like lots of friends and they're loud and there's lots of stuff that happens at the nest colonies. Gets a little stinky, but it's great. So that's another way you can kind of ID them is just where do they nest in the summer months and how do they nest, colonial or solo. This is for all 3 of those gull species. Both parents care for the chicks, both the male and female, again, you can't identify by plumage. Both do develop brood patches where there's feathers are lost on their tummies, where the eggs will just kind of nestle in there, 1, 2, 3, and they can have their skin to egg contact to better incubate. The Heermann's gulls can live up to 28 years. That's the longest lived one that had a band, down in Isla Raza, probably could live longer. The fledglings from our colonies in Seaside and the California gulls as well, they like to hang out at Seaside Beach. So if you go out to Seaside Beach, just next to it's called the Monterey Beach Hotel now by the Home Depot, kind of on the ocean side, that's where they all like to hang out. So if you want to see some cute babies, that's where you got to go. The trick, of course, and this is where a lot of our work had to get really specific, was, there's a lot of perks to living in the urban environment. A lot of birds, a lot of wildlife are like, all right, look at this free food. There's food all over this place. These humans are so trashy. I love it. I love it. And you got our little mini rocky islands up on top of a thing with the sea of cars. Perfect. But things get tricky because a lot of people want to put up netting. They're not into a colony of seagulls on the roof. This became a problem this season as netting was installed like right at the start of the season. There was nesting happening, maybe no eggs, but that you have to be doing that. And then of course netting, if it's not installed really properly and snug and tight, Costco is the gold standard. If you go to Costco and look at their netting, tight around every corner. They have little zippers where they need to change lights. Really good. So that's what I always tell people. If you go install netting like Costco does it, then that's okay, maybe. Still not nice because you're kicking a gull out. But at least you won't have big, weird gaps that now birds are underneath there and they're getting trapped, because that happens a lot. And we end up with a lot of birds just stuck or entangled, just literally tangled up in the netting and dying. So that's a real hazard for birds up on the rooftops, not just the gulls, but again, rock pigeons and other lovely birds who deserve our respect. Car collisions, car week, why? That's... Yeah, you guys sympathize. But this is a big one though. All those little juveniles that day, they're supposed to fledge at day like 45, and so they're up there and they're like, oh, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling good. My pectoral muscles are coming in. Yeah. And they're jumping and they're thinking, woohoo. And then they're like, whoa, or the wind picks up, whoa. And down they are in the road, like wandering around like, oh, where's mom and dad? And oh, where's my brother? And they don't really get cars, right? Yeah, they don't get exactly smack, squish, splat. It's not good. It's really sad. And they just don't get cars. They're literally like 42 days old. Yes, I was born yesterday. Like, I'm not very smart. You need to make sure to give lots of baby animals this time of year, lots of space and lots of grace when you're operating your big death machines, cars, because they just don't know. They don't know. And we have that responsibility as the operator to go slow. I always tell people it's like you're in the school zone. You assume every little child is going to just dart out into traffic because they're crazy. Who knows what their brain's doing, right? Well, they're nuts. They can just run out into traffic. So you drive really slow, really cautious. There could be a kid over there going slow. That's what we should do pretty much any of our downtown areas where gulls are nesting. And while our birds are mostly wrapped up off the rooftops, next year, be ready, July and August, that's when you got to be ready for that. But we're going to swap over to the positives, the thing that we're going to take action on to try to, connect people with this species, connect them with gulls overall, and try to get people, more on board with the idea. You guys all laugh at my jokes and think gulls are cool. How can we get everybody to think this? There we go.
All right. Thanks, Amanda. Very entertaining. Love your energy. And I'm going to follow that with how it is that we were able to connect with the public around finding common ground and learning about these goals, why they're important. So, of course, why couldn't you love them? They're super cute, right? So we love to start with this picture and connect people to babies. Everybody loves a baby, right? Well, maybe not, but these guys are really cute. So I want to talk a little bit about the birdie issues to reinforce what was said earlier by Amanda. They have their rooftop nesting and the fledglings fall into the street, in which case they then have deaths by auto. Another thing that she mentioned is it's pretty darn smelly. And any bird on a nest leaves a lot of droppings on the roof and also a lot of feathers. So those are some of the messy things that are birdie issues for us. And then also they have had predation by cats and raccoons because there's easy access to rooftops. So here's kind of my other birdie issue that Amanda mentioned. Hey, I'm ready. What do you think? And there's ready for liftoff. These pictures are actually taken by one of our volunteer outreach folks and Carolyn Fay, and I just love them. I thought that they were really spunky. So what did we do? So our outreach to date was where we had social media and we also had store posters. We had some postcards and then of course word of mouth to try to help these gulls. We had the store posters here that you can see, and actually there's one hanging up here if you want to come and take a look at it later, but you can see that it's in the bottom of the window here at one of the stores. And we had a number of the retailers who were able to put them up. Another one was that we had our postcards and we handed these out when we were tabling. We also gave them to some of the retailers who had them at the front of their businesses. And then what we decided this year was, well, Deb came on board 3 months ago. Let's do some more volunteer outreach. So Amanda and Kai here, we talked and came up with the cadre of volunteers who would then go do the outreach. So we also had a logo contest that Shannon ran, and we had some business collaborations. So a lot of great stuff. Looking at our outreach volunteers, we had 20 people who initially signed up and took our training. And then we ended up with 14 wonderful people who came out and spent time almost every day. We had folks sign up for 1 to 2 hour blocks over the course of 5 weeks. And they just had a really fun time sharing their passion and experience. So what we had for them was a backpack that had some vests, flip books, and fun facts and photos, binoculars just to kind of get people's attention, and a clicker so that we could make sure that we counted everybody that we talked to, and then a brochure which is out at the front. So this is just kind of the example of the backpack, and it was convenient for folks, and especially since we were able to just hand it off to the next person, or if we needed to overnight, somebody could take it, and it was all contained. And that was one of the things I really wanted to do, was to make it super easy for our volunteers to get connected. Whoa, what happened? All right. Here we've got 2 of our volunteers who went out on the very first outing, and boy, we learned a lot on that trip. We were out for 3 hours and we realized a number of things we needed to adapt for, which I'll talk about later. So we wanted everybody who was working on this to have a personal message, but we had some baseline information we wanted to share with them. So one is about, as you heard earlier from Amanda, that this is a special population that's here in Seaside. They also are smaller size than the other gulls, and frankly, I love how they laugh. Has anybody been on Seaside and heard those guys with their little cackle? And I can't help but smile and laugh when I hear them. They also, as Amanda mentioned, have a very short breeding period. So one of the messages is yeah, it's a little messy. There's some feathers around, but it's only for a few weeks. And then they're visually unique with their white head and red bills. And then we always want to finish pretty much anytime I'm out, I always want to finish with how can you take action? So we ask people to participate in a number of different ways. So here you can see that they're sharing a personal message with one of the people that they talked to on the street. And in particular, most of our volunteers really liked it. They thought they were cute with their little red bills. And now whenever I have people out with me that I've talked with about the gulls with the little red bills, they're like, oh, I know that one. So the message is sinking in. But one of the challenges that came up is when we were talking with people, oftentimes they would get a little frustrated and say, these birds are public nuisances. Business owners should net every single roof to get rid of them. So, it's kind of hard if you're out there and you want to help these birds, but your message is not really landing in a positive way. So we tried this. Monterey Audubon Society is willing to help with cleanup and working to find alternate nesting sites. So there's a little bit of a pivot, and this was suggested by Shannon as kind of a way to make it a little softer land. But at the same time, we still weren't having a lot of traction. So what we ended up doing was adapting. We focused on moving the birds to safety. So we had the safety vests on, and we were able to say, okay, little birds, let's get you out of the way. And that brought up an interest in people to talk with us because they saw we were doing something positive for the birds. Another was we cleaned up the sidewalk. We also gave tours, and some of you may have come to Pint Night at Other Brother. Yes, thank you for your support. And here, the city of Seaside actually put up some signage to help. So thank you, Seaside. Yay, Seaside. So here you can see again some of our volunteers in their vests. On the left, there's a tiny little gull right here, and we're just trying to get it out of the street. And then we also had some folks who were cleaning up by sweeping. We gave tours. You can see Kai here, and Lulu brought her family out. So this was at Other Brothers Pint Night. And then as part of the tour, we tried to show them, hey, here's not only the adults, but here's the fledgling. And just in case you can't see it on the right there, here's a blow up. And we also had a logo contest that Shannon ran, and we had some folks on our board who did a blind review of all of them. And there were about 70 of these that came in, which is phenomenal that just on a social media campaign, we were able to get that many people who submitted. And then the top 4 were voted on, and we ended up with this final version. Yay, we're really happy. Yeah, so this was really great to see the community really rally around it. And merchandise plug, if you'd like something, we have a sticker in the back, and then we also have an online store. And just on our outreach results, it was great. We had 14 people commit 140 hours, remember, over 5 weeks. So that was really real dedication. And they had 200 contacts. And as a result, I feel like because we were shepherding them out of the streets, we had fewer gull deaths and we built better community relationships. So here you can see Amanda celebrating when we had our gathering at the end of July in celebration of seeing these wonderful gulls. You can see a lot of them, not all, but a lot of them over there on the beach behind us. And here's some members of our team who helped to participate in this activity. So we have one of these decoys out on the front. You can take a closer look at it.
Awesome. Thank you, Deb. So I'm here to talk a little bit more about the nuts and bolts. And I appreciate that Deb mentioned the logo contest. I think that was one big thing that I think made a big difference. We had over 500 people vote multiple times through the course of a week and a half on that logo. So we got a lot of eyes on this project, which was really great. So thank you to all of you in this room who took time to vote or share our posts. And that was just through a targeted social media outreach there, because we knew we would get a different audience on social media. You guys probably all get our emails already. We wanted to see who else we could get in contact with. So I'm talking a little bit more about the things we learned from our interns, which haven't been mentioned at all, and our future plans for our Heermann's Gull monitoring. So Amanda mentioned a little bit of the timeline of they started nesting at Roberts Lake in 1999, and then they started jumping on rooftops. So in about 2018, we had some folks named Byron and Joanna Chin who started taking some anecdotal data on the Heermann's gulls and where they were nesting. You can see throughout, these are our pre-2026 season numbers, and this was all taken by Byron and Joanna, who at one point moved up to the Bay Area and were driving back down here to do occasional surveys. And you can see there's a few years like 2022 where we had just like one instance of data, and that was because it was just somebody who had a passion for these gulls working to see what they were doing. In 2018 is when they started nesting on the McDonald's that was at Canyon Del Rey. And unfortunately that season, somebody drove their car into the McDonald's and it burned down, it like hit a gas line and burned down. And so all of the nests were lost there that year. In 2018, they also were nesting on, it used to be Spas by the Bay. It's right there behind the Seaside sign, and there was some depredation there, probably raccoons or cats that were getting them. And then so those nests failed in 2018, and then they were nesting by the Holiday Inn and Lucky over in Sand City. And I'm going to show you a map of all of this in a little bit, so you don't have to remember all of this. But there was about 3 successful pairs at the Holiday Inn and Lucky in 2018. 2019, they were nesting by the Holiday Inn and Lucky as well, and there was very heavy rains that summer, and so the nests were abandoned because of that. But there was a little bit of success at 1625 Santa Barbara Street, which is one of the little outlets off of Broadway, which I'll point out to you when I show you the map in a little bit. 2020, Santa Barbara Street had a little bit of success, and this was the first time they started nesting in conjunction with the California gulls. In 2021, the Santa Barbara Street colony failed because the business owner put up nets. And this was the first time in 2021 when they started moving to 795 Broadway, which is where we're seeing them today. In 2022 and 23, they were nesting between 735 and 795 Broadway, which I know all these street addresses don't mean a lot to you, but 735 is the Goodwill. And 795 is an empty storefront at the corner of Calaveras. So that's right across from, or like diagonal across from the Chase Bank. And then in 24, they were also nesting in those areas. They also hopped over across to Togo's, which is up on Fremont. And then they also nested at the Santa Barbara Street location again and did pretty well there. And then last year in 2025, they were mostly at 735 to 795 Broadway, so Goodwill to Calaveras Street. And that's when we started seeing some netting go up. Sorry, my words don't like to say nest and net back and forth all the time. So I apologize. I'll probably mess that one up again tonight. So this is where we're getting into some data that I'm really excited that we can actually share. We had interns working on doing, we realized over the past year or so that we really needed some more consistent data so that we could learn more about what is actually going on with this colony, because over the years, I'm going to pop back over to this slide, you can see there was a lot of monitoring in 2018 and in 19 and not a lot through the last couple of years. And then starting in 2026, in March, which is this line here, our interns started going out weekly. And so this was all of their preseason data. I apologize, I don't have more data from them right now. We let them have a little bit of a summer break. And when we had to pivot to do this presentation last minute, I wasn't able to get all the data back from them to put on this slide, but they got a break, so that's okay. But we started looking for where we could get actual data. And I presented at, I went to an ornithology class at CSUMB in the fall and was talking about the future, about all of our projects in general. And mentioned that we were kind of on the lookout for a drone pilot because we wanted to take more consistent data. And I had a student approach me after the class and said, "Hi, I'm Max. I have a drone pilot's license. I don't have a drone, but I have a pilot's license, and I know how to do what you were talking about. So let me know if I can work with you." And I said, "Yes, absolutely." And we kept in contact, and we got him and a partner of his, Aiden, to become interns through the Undergraduate Research Opportunity Center at CSUMB. So they call it UROC. And they were 2 UROC interns that started in about March, and they have been working all summer doing weekly monitoring of our colony. Aiden's been flying the drone. We have a drone that Byron and Joanna have let us borrow that is theirs. And they've also been able to check out a drone from CSUMB and do these weekly flights. Aiden has been doing behavioral data studies. So he's got a telescoping stick that has a GoPro at the top that he's been like telescoping up so that it can peer over the side of the rooftop. And he's been doing like 5-minute segments of video with like a slow pan so he can annotate all of the behaviors that he's seeing from aggression due to territorial things to copulation to nesting to fledging and all of the in between. And so we're really getting some really good data on our local colony. And I'm really excited for when we're able to analyze all of that and get all of that in. Back to the data that we do have that I can share with you. I am super excited to share this really good data because this year we launched that official monitoring program, and we were able to contact the SPCA to ask how many Heermann gulls had been admitted to the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center there. And from June 8th to August 12th last year, there was 9 Heermann gulls. And this year, from June 8th to July 22, when Amanda pulled the report, there was 4. That is data that I'm proud of right there. It's a little bit of anecdotal data, but that is something that I'm really proud of for Monterey Audubon Society. We had our volunteers out there, and basically Kai and Amanda and I responded anytime they told us there was a downed fledgling that couldn't fly. And we took the opportunity to get down there, and Kai strapped a ladder to the roof of his car for all summer, and we would plop them back up on the rooftop. Now we've had some animal handling training, so we knew how to do that. And hopefully we can partner more with SPCA next year to get a little bit more. But that way, when that bird takes its first flight that Amanda was talking about and that Deb showed the picture of, and it is like, oh, dang it, I don't know how to actually fly to get back up on the rooftop. They were safe once they were on the ground because we plopped them back up on the roof. So I'm excited for that one piece of real data. Another thing that we were able to do this year is, sorry, I skipped some of my notes from that last slide. That's okay. I just was going to say that as of last week, there's no nests that have been confirmed active still on the rooftops. Amanda herself looked up on one of the rooftops with the help of the city of Seaside, who's been mildly helpful in a lot of these activities. And then Kai and I presented the detail shop at 788 Broadway, Central Coast PNS Detail. They are Heermann Gull heroes right now. We're very proud of the partnership we've developed with them. We presented them with a decoy and some brochures, but they also had just been on their roof to clean prior to Car Week and confirmed no active nests up there anymore. So there's no fledglings for us to worry about on Broadway during Car Week, which is really exciting. So another really cool thing that we are really excited that we got the opportunity to do this year is we were able to do some opportunistic banding. So Mike Stake works for Ventana Wildlife Society, and he's like the only one in the area that holds the permits for banding. So we worked under his guidance after he reached out to Dr. Velarde, who is like the premier Heermann gull scientist on Isla Rasa, and talked with her about some best practices. We realized very quickly that we would not be able to jump on the roof and do a mass banding event like we wanted to do, because Dr. Velarde says even on Isla Rasa, she installs temporary nets around fences around the colony so that none of the birds are injured. And we decided there was no way we were going to jump up on a rooftop and install a fence around it and be able to keep these gulls all safe while we were up there. So we decided we were going to do this opportunistically. So anytime Kai, Amanda, or I got a message that there was a downed gull, if we had banding people available, Kai did the banding under Mike's supervision. We were able to put a band on 14 Heermann's Gull fledglings this year. So they are almost full size when they're fledglings, which is something that not a lot of people think about unless you're a birder. Once they start flying, they're about the same size as a regular size gull. So people don't recognize them as babies. They have different coloration. They've got that scaly, dark scaly coloration, but they are babies. These ones are, Amanda, you just said 45 days old, so maybe 47 days old. Actually, this one is on the beach, so this one's probably 55 days old, maybe. But we were able to band 14 gulls, and by the end of the season, in the last couple of weeks, we have seen 5 of them sighted at local beaches with our band on. So this silver band here that's zoomed in on here. We've been able to re-see 5 of them. I just talked with Mike Stake prior to this, and he said, if anybody has sightings of them right now, we're not registered with U.S. Fish and Wildlife for you to report them on the website, but please email us, info@montereyaudubon.org, and let us know if you were able to see any of those, especially if you're able, and where you saw them, when you saw them, especially if you're able to get close enough or use your Zoom well enough to read the tags. They all end in 1701 through 1714. And so that is a great helpful information for us. One of the things that I would like to know long-term is, do these birds that were hatched here in Seaside stay here year round? Do they fly down to Baja next year with the other ones? Do they hang out here for a couple of years until they're old enough to mate and have their own next generation? Like, what do they do? And this is something that can help us learn about that. And we're going to do our best to keep banding. We might work on doing some banding with the colorful tags like the snowy plovers have, so we can identify individuals. This is what we were able to put together fairly quickly this year, and we're very proud to have done that. Here we go. So here's more about what we've learned. So the blue icons on this map, these little icons, and I tried to crop it so there's not too many more blue things. There's a blue thing there, but all of the rest of the blue locator icons are significant to Heermann's gulls. The 2 main areas are here right around Roberts Lake and here right around Broadway Avenue. And there's the one exception of Lucky's up there in Sand City, which I'll get to, that being a conundrum for me in a minute. But that kind of shows you where they were nesting. So the original nests were right here in Roberts Lake, and then they were at McDonald's, and then they were spas by the bay, and then somehow up at Lucky, but then mostly right over here in Seaside along the Broadway corridor. Let me take you a little bit closer so you can start learning some of the things that we learned. And these are very anecdotal things. We don't have a published paper on this or anything, but this is some observations that we made with the help of our interns this year and the help of all of the super smart people that we've worked with. But this is Broadway Avenue, the Broadway Avenue corridor. So this is the Chase Bank. Grocery Outlet is here. You got Other Brother Brew Co. there. Again, thank you to those of you who came to our pint night. And we have a Heermann's gull on each of the buildings where they've been nesting recently. So if you notice, most of those buildings, so this is 788, the PNS detail shop, the jiu-jitsu studio. This is 795. This is 735. They all look quite similar. Those rooftops have some similarities that you can see here. Like they're very different from like this black rooftop. One thing that was really cool that the city did this year that I want to plug them for, the city owns this building and it is a 2-story building, and they allowed our interns access to the roof on a weekly basis so that they could monitor from above, which was really cool. They have started putting a clause into all of their new lease agreements that they have to net the rooftops, which I'll get into in a minute about more netting. But the city has been trying to be helpful with us. And so we're trying to play nice and trying to make sure that we keep that a good relationship so that we can continue to have access to their building and they can continue to maybe put more signs out. So here's the historical locations, the 2018 to 2023 era locations. So we've got Spas by the Bay. Oh, I forgot to point out the Santa Barbara Street location. Is it on this map? It is not on this map. Santa Barbara Street is like right here next to Other Brother, just between Other Brother and Fremont, just so you've got an idea of where that one is. So here's aerial views of the buildings that they had nested on between 2018 and 2023-ish. So we've got the Santa Barbara Street location, Spas by the Bay. They were primarily on this portion. Lucky, which is for lots of reasons an outlier that I'll get into in a second. This is the rooftop of McDonald's circa 2016. It's very different now, but 2016 when they were nesting there. And then Togo's up on Fremont. Ignore Lucky for a second. Do the rest of those look very similar to rooftops to what we were just looking at in the other? They're very similar, right? Can you see where I'm going here? Okay, let me take you a little bit closer. So this is 795 Broadway. So this is Calaveras looking toward the Auto Mall. And then it's an empty storefront. There's the Oriental Market and the Clay Studio, and then over here would be 795. Amanda was pointing out earlier in her slides, this could very easily be confused for a Rocky Beach, right? I think that's what my thoughts are. That's what our team's thoughts are. This is the Goodwill and Danny's Glass. This is Central Coast PNS, all very similar, like a tar and gravel rooftop that doesn't have a dark base. I actually hardly ever saw any birds on the roofs that have the dark tar roof. And so that's one of our theories right now, is that they're attracted to these buildings that have this kind of tar and gravel style rooftop. We probably need to do, I don't know, at least 2 to 3 more years of good monitoring, good data analysis before we can make any decisions on where we go from here. But this is currently one of our theories. And with the city moving forward with trying to net more and more buildings and the goodwill that we're trying to make with our neighbors on Broadway, where we're talking to them about, hey, we don't like these birds here either because they fall off the roof and they get hit by cars. Let's protect them while we can, and we'll figure out a solution in the next couple of years, and we can start working toward that together. One of the thoughts that we've had, and I'm sharing with you all the like crazy brainstorm ideas that we've had, but one of the thoughts that we've had is that we could strategically net off buildings to strategically get them to where we want them to be that are in a safer location. I don't know how many buildings in Seaside have this tar and gravel style rooftop, but I bet there's some that are not on the busy Broadway corridor, Fremont corridor, Del Monte, that are a little bit more inward that we could help with. And I've also been very vocal that I'm willing to help fundraise to do whatever cleanup, whatever mitigation that we need to do in the meantime. So there was one of the businesses on Broadway said, like, you cost me $500,000 in business last year because I do car stereos and these birds pooped on a Bentley. And this Bentley owner told all of his friends, don't send your car here for your stereo work because it'll get pooped on. And I wish I had thought of this while I was in the conversation with him, because I haven't wanted to go back and talk to him much since then. But how expensive is one of those like portable car cover tent things? That is not too expensive, especially if we branded it with Monterey Audubon Society. Not too expensive of an endeavor for us to do a little bit of fundraising for, to say, hey, for these 6 weeks, park your Bentleys under this thing, and then we'll be good, right? We've also noticed that a lot of the buildings that have awnings off their front doors, there's not as much poop there, not even as much poop on the awnings. So I'm not sure what's going on with that, but maybe we install more awnings. We had some of our outreach volunteers doing some sweeping. That was a terrible mess because it was windy and we were sweeping up feathers. But we were talking to the detail shop and they're like, what if you guys purchased one of our little misters that we use for detailing cars and misted the feathers first before you swept them? Okay, that makes a great thing. That one of the crazy ideas that I had that I don't think will ever pan out is like, have you ever been to the aquarium early in the morning when they're still cleaning the floors, and there's that like right on Zamboni for cleaning the floors? What if we got one of those and had our volunteers drive it up and down the sidewalk to clean up the poop? Like, I'm on board for getting creative to figure out a temporary solution to this problem, because I think in the long run we can make a big difference for this species and help figure out a solution that works not only to protect these gulls and the 1% of the population that nests here. For whatever reason they nest here, well, maybe they just figured out what all of us figured out and what all the tourists figure out. This is a really great place to be. Another crazy thought that I've had is that I want to track these bands because I want to know if they stay here. I've heard various theories about humpback whales staying here in the Monterey Bay because it's so prolific and there's so much food, and the juveniles are not ready to breed yet. So they stay here. I'm wondering if that's the case with these Heermann's gulls. And if it's the case with both of those species, I bet there's other species that do the same thing that we haven't figured out yet. Some other options include another artificial habitat. So if you guys have been around Monterey and interacting with Monterey Audubon since the 2018 era, you probably remember this 2019 island. And this island is still floating in Roberts Lake. We worked with Citizens for Sustainable Monterey County and some other groups, and we raised, I don't know, it was like $25,000 to buy this island with the help of Joanna and Byron Chin, we installed in Roberts Lake. We put some decoys out there. We put some audio playbacks out there, and we were trying really hard to get them back onto this platform. But if you look at it, does that look like a tar and gravel rocky island? Not so much. I don't know what it looked like when it was actually out there. This was the only photo that I found of it, and I was not around Monterey Audubon then to remember. But we think that we might be able to reinvent those sandbar islands that Amanda was showing you the footprint for, those like 2 figure-8 shapes, or maybe even install something bigger on Roberts Lake that might help attract them. The data that I have on here is from another UROC intern that we had from CSUMB. We were working with an environmental studies class, which is a psychology side of environmental conservation as opposed to the biology side. And they focus more on human interaction and how you can create change by working with people to create change. And this student really wanted to do some work with us. And I said, you know, one of the things that we need to learn before we can make any decisions on how we're going to protect the Heermann's gulls is we need to learn what we know about the Heermann's gulls. So he's doing a literature review for us this summer, and his name is Jose Marquez, and he's doing a literature review for us this summer. So he's focusing on artificial islands and artificial habitats for similar species and what has made them successful. You can see 75% of the projects use decoys that were successful. 63% of them did audio playback. So we tried those. Amanda, did we try scent or feathers or habitat cues? Okay, we had what? Oh, we had mirror boxes, so they would get there and think that there was other gulls there. Translocation project is something that other projects have done. That requires a whole lot of time and effort, which maybe we'll get there and want to do that. But that also requires a lot more permitting and a lot more expenses. And the permitting is mostly because they are nesting species, and their little fledglings are protected under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, which right now it's really hard to get enforcement on that. So maybe those permits will get easier to get in the future. Hopefully not. Hopefully our Migratory Bird Treaty Act stays in place and we can keep getting protections for these nesting birds. But I think for right now, we need to take a little bit more data before we can make a big decision on what we're going to do. And one other thing is certain. Monterey Audubon Society has our conservation programs. We just did a strategic planning phase through the beginning half of this year, and we polled our community to find out what our community thinks of us and what they view our role is in the community. And our community overwhelmingly said that Monterey Audubon Society is here as a conservation organization, which we agree with, but our board and staff this was right before we hired Deb. So our board and I were thinking, like, what does that mean to be a conservation organization? And do we have big outputs that we can show our community what we have done and what habitats we have protected? And yes, we have some of those. We helped Pacific Grove enact the recreational drone ordinance to prohibit drones in Pacific Grove. And we've done a lot of small things. That was a huge one for the black oyster catchers, but we've done a lot of small things. But we want with our small and mighty staff of 2, myself and Deb, and our board of 9, who most of them either work full-time or they volunteer full-time for other organizations like this. We're small but mighty, but we need a little bit more help to get there. We want to take our black oyster catcher monitoring project, our Heermann's Gull project, our Sea Watch migratory bird study, and our work with the Snowy Plover Guardian program, and all the other work that we do. And we want to formalize it. We want to publish our results, and we want to make it a bigger difference so that we have something to show for all this data that we've been collecting for years. And the way that we have decided that we need to do that is that we need to hire a conservation director, which the board has approved it in our deficit budget for this year, to hire a conservation director shortly after the new year. And so shortly after the new year, we are going to be, or we'll probably start the searching process sooner, but we're going to be looking for somebody who can help look at these projects, look at our 10, 15 of data, and help us figure out the best way forward to make the biggest difference for our organization. We're also looking at them potentially doing some advocacy work, both here in Monterey and maybe even at the state level, and advocating for things that can help our birds, which we're really excited to do. So I want to take a moment to say thank you to our Heermann's Gull team. I'm at the end of all of the important information, but as I mentioned, we've got a small but mighty team. Deb was hired in May, and you saw the timeline for Heermann's Gull hatchlings. They started hatching at the end of May and fledging a couple weeks later. And Deb was able to jump in and build this outreach program from the ground up with the support of our board members and myself. Amanda works full-time for California State Parks, but I swear she sometimes still works full-time for us. And Kai, who has recently joined the Cornell team as a contractor working with Merlin, he spent his remote work time sitting in his car watching these fledglings to help make sure that we have the protection that we need on them this season. And I don't think I could have done this without this team and without you all here helping to support us with this project. So a big thank you to everybody who helped make this season a success. I think we are right at 7 o'clock, so I could take a couple of questions. I don't have any questions online, so if there's a couple questions for us, Amanda, Deb, Kai, and myself will do our best to answer them. And if we can't answer them tonight, we will get you the answer. And you're always welcome to email us with questions. Yes.
I go behind the Lucky in Carmel a lot, and last year or the year before, a lot of fledglings wound up on the ground, and I called the SPCA, and they said, don't do anything about it, just let nature take its course, the parents will feed it, and they did, and it grew bigger. The one I was following grew bigger, and then it disappeared. So I think a raccoon got it, and I was very disappointed. Have they changed their minds since you guys are now allowed to bring the fledglings back up to the roof?
Oh, that's a great question. So for those of you online, we have a person here that said that they've followed some of the fledglings of the Western gulls fledging off the Lucky in Carmel and followed one, called the SPCA about it, and they were told to leave them alone. Parents will feed it. We have watched parents feed their chicks on the ground, even in our Broadway colony. The SPCA would not come out and relocate it. I am hoping that we can help bridge the gap with that next year. I think that they don't come and respond because they don't have the capacity or the funding to be able to do that. And I'm hoping that we can help build their capacity a little bit or have them train us. Frankly, we operated on Monterey Audubon Society's old structure of asking for forgiveness. For that one, we had talked to the city of Seaside. Their animal control specialist was completely on board with it. We mentioned to this SPCA that we were doing it, and the people that we had handling the birds have all had animal handling experience before. So we felt pretty confident with doing that, and we're hoping to train more people that will be able to help with that. And I'm also hoping that in the long run, we can work with not just the city of Seaside, but Pacific Grove and Monterey to be able to get more signs out for the baby birds and help people understand that those darker gulls, most of the young ones that have just fledged this year are darker, but they're the same size as the adults. Amanda held up that big chart. I'm not an expert on that big chart of all the gulls and all their plumages, but most of the ones that nest around here, they're a lot darker in that first year, and they're the same size when they start fledging. So we need to tell people, if it's a darker gull, it's a baby and it can't fly out of your way. So be a little bit more careful as you're driving around and help us spread that word around. Any more questions? Yeah. Oh, that was a great question. Are the bands that we're installing on the leg of the bird tracked electronically? No, we could not afford that this year. That is one of our hopeful plans for the future, depending on how we get through this fiscal year and figure out our funding for the future. If we get grant funding in the future, there are Bluetooth tags that can be installed, and there's actually, they're called Modus tags, and there's Modus towers throughout the world now, throughout at least the United States. There's one in Elkhorn Slough. There's one at the Point Sur Lighthouse. Monterey Audubon is working on putting one in Marina. And so they would just have to fly near that to get to like ping a result. And that would be really cool. I know the ones that they've put on the monarch butterflies are like $150 or $200 per tag. And so that would get expensive real fast, but that is a dream goal of ours for this program. Yeah. Doing good. Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. The question was, looking at the rooftops, what nesting material are they using? Because you don't actually see a nest.
I've got a good answer for that one. They bring in loads of material from the beaches. You'll actually see them fly in, and that's one of those things you look for in April when we can't get up on the roof, so we're just on the ground looking like, I wonder what they're up to. And you'll see one fly in with a big beak full of like kelp or surf grass. And the California gulls got really into these straw bales that are out on Seaside Beach trying to like hold the dune in place, and they were just like grabbing beakfuls of it and flying in. So they do scrounge and they find it, and it's not a really robust nest, right? It's not as low, minimalist as a snowy plover. It's not a scrape, but it's barely a nest, right? So this is a little bit of material, but they find stuff, and it can be a little bit of like feathers and bits of rock from around and debris from the rooftop. They're pretty messy, but I have some pictures if anyone wants to see a nest up close. It's very poopy.
Okay, I'm going to take one more question, but remember, Deb, Kai, Amanda, and I are all here for social hour. And if you have more questions, come talk to us or email us about them, and we can get your questions answered. Yeah. That was a super great comment. So the comment for those of you online, or if you couldn't hear him, was that tar and gravel roofs are quickly becoming a thing of the past. So looking for ways to support nesting in places that aren't on the rooftops is probably a really great way to go. One of the other crazy ideas that we've had is installing an artificial rooftop somewhere that is somewhere like maybe there's a small building on the side of Roberts Lake, maybe installing an artificial rooftop over top of that building that is tar and gravel so that we can attract them there. As I said, we have a couple years more of data collecting and researching that we're going to do before we make any kind of decision, and a conservation director to bring on to help us make those decisions, because while we have very highly educated staff and board members, we need a little help to get a little bit further on that one. But I wanted to thank you all again for joining us tonight. We are thoroughly impressed with the support that our community continually gives us, and how much you guys have shown up for us with this Heermann's Gull project. I was getting calls, texts, emails, DMs on Instagram, DMs on Facebook, all these things with people telling us that there was a fledgling down on Broadway that needed our help. And we couldn't do it without the help of all of you all. So thank you for being here. And if you have appreciated us and appreciated what you're learning from us tonight, I'm going to try this again. If you were here last month, you might know what I'm about to say. But if you really enjoyed us tonight, consider putting $5 in our donation jar on the way out to help support our endeavors, or signing up for our newsletter list. If you don't get our newsletter, we send out about one e-blast a month, sometimes a couple more, or just join us on a field trip. But that $5 really does go a long way in an organization that, and I'm going to get down and dirty with you real quick, organization with you that had a $189,000 operating budget last year. And we're trying to double that for this year so that we can bring on our conservation director, and that we brought on Deb. So again, $5 goes a long way for us as a very small organization. Thank you all for joining us, and we're here for questions.